Let's do this. The Cult of Hockey Pod by the Faithful, for the Faithful. I'm David Staples with the Edmonton Journal, and I'm here tonight with Bruce. Hey, Bruce.
Hey David, how are you doing tonight?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm kind of bummed out tonight, David. Kind of
Yeah,
bummed
with
out.
such a great comeback, hey, Bruce. Such a great comeback, and
Mm.
just almost a night to remember for Oilers fans. And now it's just another night of despair. Kind of. Well, might be too strong a word. Depends on how ego ego involved you are with the team attached to it. But it was very that was tough to take. That was tough to take. Although, Bruce, according to our scoring chance data, the better team did win tonight.
Yep.
The Kings had 21 grade A shots on net,
Mm-hmm.
and the Oilers had 13. The
Mm-hmm.
Kings, so that's the shots that have more than 20% chance of going in. When it comes to the very best of those shots, the subset of five alarm shots, the Kings had 13 shots like that, and the Oilers had 8. So that those shots have a 33% plus chance of going in, and the Kings were dominant in both of the key shot categories, grade A shots and five alarm shots. And yeah, the Oilers, some individual brilliance, I'm going to say, pulled them back
Yep.
into that game. But the Kings were
Right
the better
about
team
that.
for the second game in a row. The Kings were the better team, and the Oilers need a better effort out of a lot of players in some significant ways if they're going to win the next two games and advance in the playoffs. This is our two good things, two bad things, and two numbers podcast. Bruce, we'll start it off with you. Well, let's go in the order of the game, actually, to kind of give a little
Okay.
narrative structure to the podcast, and we'll start with the bad thing because I know what your bad thing is. What is the bad thing that you had in mind here?
Bad things and yet another wretched start from the Edmonton Oilers. It flummoxes me, David, how they can't pay attention to this detail. Be ready for the start of the GD hockey game. Man, they had trouble with this for about 60 games for the season. It seemed like they finally had it figured out down the stretch. In this series, game after game, the Kings have come out and totally got the jump on the Oilers. Tonight, the shots were 16-5 in the first period, making the count for the series. What's that? 85 for the Kings and 47 for the Oilers. It's like almost a 2-to-1 ratio, 17 shots per first period. That's like a 51 shots against per game, which is wretched. And it's like 5 different games, but it's the same part of each game. And each game, the Kings come flying out of the gate. And each game, the Oilers are, oh, we're surprised. Maybe we should just dump the puck back to them over and over and over again. And if we're lucky, we'll dump it into the neutral zone and they can come flying back at us from center instead of just keeping the zone pressure on. But they just weren't ready to go. David, I would have bet, if I were a betting man, I've already written this in my header, I would have bet anything that the Oilers would have been ready to go tonight. And if I were a betting man, I would be a broke man because they were not ready to go tonight. And by the 5 minute mark of the first period, the shots were 6-0 LA and the score was 1-0 LA in a series where the first goal has been the thing. Like no lead changes in the entire series. Every team that scored first has just gone on to win, never trailed. And there's been a couple ties, and there was a couple ties tonight, but ultimately that falling behind in the early deficit and all the energy they had to expend to pull back in the game. And then I guess just to extend the point, a wretched start to overtime. And here's the good news: wretched starts in overtime don't last very long. One
That
minute and
was not
12 seconds of playing chase, and it was over.
that was not good news. Like I was settling in for that long overtime, and I just was thinking, yeah, maybe the Oilers' skill will, the individual brilliance that got them back in the game will win the game
Yeah.
for them, and but not to be. There was individual brilliance, but it wasn't on the part of the
Mm-hmm.
Oilers. It was Adrian Kempe who scored an absolutely fantastic goal, great rush down the wing,
Mm-hmm.
and to give him credit, like it really was a tremendous play. I wish Smith had done
Yep.
the old poke check there. Bruce,
Like Quick did, huh?
yeah, yeah. Again, Mike Smith is the second best goalie. He had a lot more action than Quick, right? We've already
Mm-hmm.
enunciated that, and I'm not blaming Mike Smith. And that was a tough
Yeah.
play on the winning goal because Kempe had the option of putting it over his shoulder, which kind of you don't want to go for the poke check thing because the guy can put it, if he's that wide open on the break-in, he can put it up over you. So that inhibits you from making that kind of play. I agree, Bruce. That first period was, what is going on? What is going on? What is going on? And the first goal against just made my head hurt, which leads into my bad thing.
Okay.
I really thought Draisaitl's line in the defensive zone was totally out of sync. And finally, like, I'm a big proponent of breaking up McDavid and Draisaitl, put them on their own lines and make them responsible for it. Well, by the end of the second period, when Leon was -3 and arguably culpable on all 3 goals against to some extent, I was glad to see him on the wing with McDavid, because that line was not working at all.
No,
it wasn't just his fault.
Nope.
Ryan McLeod had a rough game, and I mean, there's the penalty that he took, but on the first goal against, he's back. There's a kind of a rush up the ice down the boards, and McLeod's back in kind of the F1 spot, and he just kind of does this big loop and heads back up the ice. And in this play, which kind of hits the Oilers' net, there's a save, and then goes back out to the point, and there's a point shot. Between Draisaitl and McLeod, they never figured out. They never figured out who was supposed to be covering the goalie.
In theory, it's
the point.
It's the winger in theory, but
yeah, well, except someone's F1 if it's McLeod, So Leon lost the battle on the wall there, and as they're coming down, he and Keith lost the battle on the wall. So my bad thing is actually Leon's in this game. Leon's defense, a veteran center, his defense, and Duncan Keith, his defense. And on this one, the first goal, Stetcher's goal, Keith was there screening the goalie. And it was kind of the least of the mistakes that he made on goals against, but it was definitely screening the goalie, and that makes it very hard for the goalie. But it's a wide open point shot because McLeod doesn't get out there in time, and very frustrating. The next play that there's a mistake on is the Kings' second goal between Draisaitl and Keith. Keith just throws the puck. They've been out on the ice a long time, and they're tired by then. And he gets the puck, and instead of making the safe pass up the boards, Kane's right there. Evander Kane's at the blue line. Duncan Keith decides to throw it up the middle of the ice, and it gets picked off, and they go in and they score. And the next goal, it's Kulak who does that, throws it up the middle, and they score. And on both those goals, Leon was, as he was heading one way, he was F1. He was supposed to work with the defenseman to advance the puck. As the puck's going, as they're turning it over, he's shooting up ice, and the puck's going the other way. So it was a very kind of aggressive offensive play by Leon, not cautious defensive play on either one. And I think the second one, he was more obviously culpable than on the on the second of those 2 turnover goals between Keith and Kulak's turnovers, which were the main problems on those goals. But I would just like to see Leon take care in the defensive zone. I just think there's not enough awareness, concentration on his part at this point. I'm seeing it from McDavid, honestly. I'm seeing that effort to take care of his own zone, cover his man, play fundamental defense. And I didn't sense that from Draisaitl tonight. And I think it cost the team. Then we finally get to the winning goal. And again, it's Duncan Keith. He just gets beat by Kempe wide, the graybeard with his feet weren't fast enough. And Kane made an earlier mistake. Obviously, Kane's mistake is probably the biggest mistake, because he just misses the puck. And if he doesn't miss that puck, it's a bobbling puck. If he doesn't miss that puck, if he gets it into their end, there's no trouble. So then there's this quick turnover kind of play, and McDavid tries to make the play, and Kempe just bulls past him. It was a tough play for McDavid to make. But I think Keith should have made that play. He was in position to defend Kempe, and he got beat by a bigger, faster player, younger player.
Come close.
He didn't come close. And I'm saying that's on Duncan Keith. But you could argue that the biggest mistake was on Keith on that one. But so, like on two of the goals, Keith was the primary culprit, and um, they brought him in to win games like this.
Yeah.
And he hasn't played. He's played okay, maybe even good. He's played good hockey, strong hockey in some ways up until now. This wasn't good or strong on those defensive plays, key mistakes that really hurt the Oilers.
Neither was Sunday good for the pairing of Keith and Bouchard. And so tonight, I mean, we had him screening Smith on the first goal. And it was actually the second goal that Kempe scored from the circle. First of all, Keith's pass got intercepted just outside the blue line. They came pouring back. This is something that happened often in this game, where when the Oilers did get it out, it was barely out and was coming right back at him. And on that one, he came over and tried to block Kempe's shot, and instead it caught the back of his skate.
That's right.
And it handcuffed Keith. Commentators on TV did never catch that. There's a couple of things they never caught, but they never caught that that puck went off at Keith's skate. Of course, you and I are going back looking at it, slowing it down and stuff, and a couple of angles. It's pretty obvious that it's actually Keith's trailing skate that it goes off, and it's bad luck, but ultimately he got beat on that one, and then on the game winner. They started the overtime, and this is a question that's already been asked of Jay Woodcroft, and it needed to be asked. How the hell come are you starting overtime with a defense pair that you haven't used before in Brett Kulak and Duncan Keith? And they played the whole 72 seconds of overtime. They never got off, of course, because it was a long change, and the Oilers never got the bloody puck over center the whole time. So how the hell are you going to change the defenseman? Well, he was hurt. Earlier in the game, he went to the room, but he played 26 and a half minutes, David. And he was, he made the big defensive play in the dying seconds of regulation, but he didn't start the overtime. And Keith Kulak, for whatever reason, it wasn't Bouchard. They didn't want a defensive mistake, I guess. And Keith was sort of second guy in on as the puck went around on the cycle. LA just kept winning it along the boards and bumping it along, and there's a lot of that. There's nothing any one player can do when they keep it on the perimeter. But what he did do, I'm sure, is get tired, and then he had nothing left to stop Kempe. No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
Keith Kulak, what? Yeah. What are they doing? Because they have Cece, Bouchard, and Barry. Like they have three right. Did a right defenseman get hurt? Were they missing a right defenseman on the bench? You'd have to check, I guess, and look, because I mean, you'd think you'd go with Cece, right? He's your best right defenseman. He's your best defensive defenseman.
Wouldn't you?
Yeah, you would, Bruce. You would. Well, maybe there's an explanation. There must be, because one of those right defensemen must have been injured, because I don't think you do that otherwise. It doesn't make any sense.
The explanation was that that's what they felt was the best that they could do in that situation, and obviously whatever the hunch was, it blew up in their faces big time, because those guys couldn't win any physical battles and they couldn't move the puck out, and when they did move it out, it came right back at them, and Keith was simply overwhelmed by Adrian Kempe. So I mean, the difference between, I mean, you point out Draisaitl and Keith's mistakes. At least Draisaitl did something at the other end of the ice, right? Like he got 3 points.
Sure. No denying that. He was fantastic. I mean,
third period. Once they put him on the wing with McDavid, which is the last thing I kind of expected to see, but tonight it was appropriate. That move was a good one, because Leon's line was floundering, and he was too. And so getting reassigned like that, he and McDavid caught fire, and I thought, really, they both should have had 3 points in the third, but they scored the one unassisted shorthanded goal because the defenseman whacked at David's pass across the goal mouth and whacked it towards Draisaitl, and he pounded it in. So they said it was.
I see.
Anyway, it was McDavid created that goal, and he created the other goals, but we'll talk about him in a bit. At least Leon came alive offensively. I mean, there's not much offense in Duncan Keith's game at this point, and when he was on the ice tonight, the Oilers were outshot 16-6 and outscored 3-0. Yeah, we had him as responsible on each of the 3 goals. That's a pretty tough night.
It's a 2 or a 3. grade for that
Yep.
kind of performance.
I'm deciding between those two numbers as we speak.
Yeah. I'd be okay with either, Bruce. Let's go to the bad thing, or excuse me, we did the bad thing. Let's go to the good thing. What is your good thing, Bruce?
Well, I'll have to go with the third period comeback. And I mean, credit, I was going to say the whole team, but parts of it were riding the pine. I have yet to go through the ice time in any detail to see who didn't play at all in the third period, but I can tell you a few guys who didn't play much. And that included Jesse Puljujarvi, Zach Kassian, Warren Fogle that barely saw the ice in the third. They shortened the bench, and McDavid particularly, and McDavid's line particularly took over the game, and somewhere in there the Oilers found time to take 3 or 4 penalties, and or 4 penalties, I guess. There was a 2-man short, and there was oh man. Anyway, it was just a sec. No,
Kane?
I guess yeah, they started the period shorthanded because Kane and Kassian were in the box after the second, and then McDavid took a tripping penalty, and while he was off, Ryan McLeod took a double minor, so they had to kill like 7 minutes of penalties in the third period. And somewhere out of there, they managed to score 3 goals despite sort of only 13 minutes of having 5 players on the ice. So
it was astonishing.
It was.
It was an astonishing comeback. It really was, and brilliant playing by their 2 best players.
The whole game, David, was out of control, and even that comeback. I mean, it was thrilling, exhilarating hockey. But I never got the sense that Edmonton was in control. Like every time the puck went the other way, they were scrambling and not very successfully. And Smith bailed them out 2 or 3 times in the third period.
Well, again, 21-13 for the grade A shots for the Kings, right? Like they were just a better team consistently in the game, and I had the same feeling, Bruce. Like I was hoping the Oilers could somehow win in the overtime, but it was more of an individual effort, and my good thing from Connor McDavid, I think specifically, who brought the Oilers back into this game. It was one of McDavid's best games. He was just so determined to win, and against a very tough checking Los Angeles team. The first goal comes on it's Kulak who puts it in from the point. Puck hits a Kings player. McDavid gets it, and he's got all this time, it seems, in front of Quick, and he doesn't shoot, so it's very frustrating because he looks like he has a golden opportunity. But he takes it behind the net so quickly that Quick's way out of position, puts it over to Kassian, and Kassian slams it in, and then Kassian makes kind of a facial expression for the ages. Kind of looked like a baboon, I think. It was just very primal, put it that way, Kassian's look. But that was just McDavid again, like his incredible skill. He's next seen with the Oilers down 3-1, charging up the ice. That's coming a little bit later. This is where he's kind of sashaying around on the power play, I think, and puts it over to Draisaitl, who slams it in. Then he's on the shorthand.
He scored one himself before that, though, right? Where it was right off the face-off, and all of a sudden he was
that's what I got. I'm misreading our code.
And he roofed it.
Yeah, that's it. Draisaitl wins the face-off, kind of like he pushes it over, and then Hyman blocks off his man, and McDavid gets it, and just absolutely incredible backhand roof shot. What strong wrists McDavid has making that play. Again, like the skill is unreal. Then he's charging down the wing on the penalty kill, going 1,000,000 miles an hour and puts it into the slot. Kulak makes a hard charge to the net, and Draisaitl makes no mistake. Like, good for Leon. Like, that's who you want shooting the puck in that situation, and he absolutely drains it. Then the final tying goal for Edmonton, the 4-4 goal, is when McDavid is kind of making all kinds of slick moves with the puck in the corner. He was just on that power play. He was just so charged up. He just took it hard to the net. He's moving around fast with the puck, and finally he sets up Draisaitl for the executioner shot, and Draisaitl slams it home. That classic goal. We get to see it again, and yeah, he really put the Oilers. The old expression, put the Oilers, his team, on his back and carried them to that 4-4 tie. He was the key player on every single of those 4 goals, I'm going to suggest. Although Draisaitl's finish on the last goal was maybe that Draisaitl was the key player on the last goal because of his finish. But just a great game from Connor McDavid, and he must. I think right now, Bruce, that this is a very determined group of players, and a veteran group of players in a lot of ways. And I think they're convincing themselves right now that they're going to win the next game. And I think there's a distinct possibility they will win the next 2 games. I'm down, but I'm not out in terms of looking at this series. I think they're going to come out next game from the start and take it to the Kings.
I thought that tonight. Now they're going to LA, so I think the last game the first 8 shots for the Kings. Tonight was the first 6, and that's been a story over and over. Unfortunately for McDavid, who he played his heart out in this game, but unfortunately he was among the victims on Kempe's game winner, when Kempe went up the boards and McDavid tried to stop him and just wasn't able to slow Kempe's momentum.
Very tough play for McDavid.
It was, but he kind of had the angle on him, and he was on the end of his shift maybe, and I don't suppose Kempe had been out there the entire time. In fact, I'm pretty sure he wasn't, because Moore had started overtime and had a great chance right away. So anyway, it was a sour taste to end McDavid's night, was to be, among those beaten on the game-winning goal in overtime. I mean, that's
he was one of the culprits.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be thinking about that if he just had leaned in a little harder. But Kempe's a big man and a fast man. That was a tough. After a turnover, like when you have to suddenly change directions and then you're extending yourself to make the check. After that kind of turnover, it just throws everybody off. Like you're just out of sorts for a second. So we did tag McDavid with a major mistake leading to a grade A shot on that play, and I think that was the right call based on our criteria. But Duncan Keith, man, Bruce, I'm still reeling. I didn't realize that it was Kulak and Keith on the ice and on that last play. I hadn't processed that.
They started
Those are the
overtime.
2 guys that made the 2 big turnovers in the second period, and they're thinking, okay, let's go with those 2 guys. I don't like that. That's a little too cute, I think. Unless there's an injury that we don't know about, I'm not thinking that's a brilliant coaching move.
Yeah.
What's your number?
I don't understand it. My number is 21, and that's the number of giveaways officially charged to the Oilers in this game, and that's just far too many. And they treated the puck like a lighted firecracker more than a few times. And I mean, the Kings' pressure had things to do with it, but the Oilers were not really able to cope with that, especially forechecking pressure in their own end. And I mean, the 21 giveaways is just a fraction of the turnovers that occurred during this game. A number of which is where they dump the puck out of the zone, so it's not officially a turnover, even though they're coughing the puck right back to the other team. And I just thought their puck management needs to be a whole lot better. And this is where you were talking earlier about how determined the Oilers were. Well, if the Oilers were super determined, they wouldn't have made some of the mistakes they made tonight, and they would have showed up for the first period. So I think they've still got some proving to do on the determination front. And if they want to prove they're determined, play 60 and as many more minutes as it takes on Thursday night in Los Angeles, because they did not have a 60-minute effort tonight in the biggest game of the season.
They did not. Bruce, my number revolves around one of the role players, Josh Archibald. I really liked Archibald and Nugent Hopkins at even strength. I thought Nuge was exceptional on the penalty kill and at even strength. He really brought his A game and was involved and making all kinds of great plays. But so was Archibald, and he's giving the Oilers. He's one of the guys who is giving the Oilers the kind of intensity that they need. He's moving around the ice fast. He's making plays with the puck, fairly sharp plays with the puck often.
First period he did.
And he had 10 hits. My number is 10. It's a lot of hits. The Oilers had 42 hits. The next highest player had 4, and there was a few people tied with 4 hits. Kane, Yamamoto, who also had some big hits, and Kulak. But 10 hits. And lots of those were hard hits. Where he's just, the Tasmanian devil going at those guys and bowling them over. So they need that kind of intensity from more hockey players on this team. And no more turnovers up the middle of the ice either. Those are just brutal. Those were brutal. Although on the one that Kulak made, there was a controversy whether that should have been icing on the play. And, Kulak had position at as they were crossing the, what is it, the line and the ringette line, or
it's the hash marks.
The hash marks.
I thought Kulak was ahead of him, and I put a tweet out, and I got some rejoinders from people that said that Kulak, instead of chasing for the puck, stood back up to try and prevent Athanasio from reaching it. And they do have a point, because he was doing that.
That's true.
I thought the whole thing, though, was who gets to the hash marks first in your bow. I mean, no Oiler had a chance to play that puck before it got over the goal line. Like, he could have been going 100 miles an hour. He wouldn't have reached that puck before it got to the line. So I just thought you win that race. And Smith was angry. Woodcroft on the bench was visibly upset after that goal. But that was the call. And, of course, the way the NHL works is that you can challenge offsides now with a micrometer and the Zapruder film and challenge offside, but you can't challenge an icing, which is another routine call made by the same official who makes the offside call. So it's just the nature of the beast that there's no recourse. You just have to accept it. But there was a few pretty puzzled. Kulak looked very puzzled too on that call, but that was the call that was made. And Andres Athanasiou, I knew he'd hurt us at some point in the series, and Oilers gave up 2 second-round draft picks for that guy, and got 11 games out of him and lost him for nothing. He went to L.A., divisional rival, as a free agent. Now here he is scoring a crucial goal. It's hurting the Oilers bad in a big playoff game. The hockey gourds are vengeful. So.
Indeed, Bruce. Indeed. I'm just looking at the Oilers lineup and thinking who has to play better, and there's hardly a player who really doesn't. I mean, I think, like tonight, at least from memory, I like Cody. I think Cody Ceci is just a really solid hockey player, and he's continuing to play solid hockey right now. And Archibald was effective in his role. Darnell Nurse is clearly playing hurt still, in my view. He's okay-ish, but he's not Darnell Nurse. And Leon's been great on the attack, but his defensive play throughout the series has really left me frustrated. Cassian's played well. Cassian's raised his game. Yamamoto is playing really well. But Puljujarvi and McLeod. What were you going to say?
Well, I mean, here's the thing for Archibald. He did make a couple of nice passes in the first period that set up more or less Oilers' only decent chances, so there was that.
Yeah.
He had 0 shot attempts in the game, and the Oilers were on the short end of shot attempts, shots, Scoring chances, grade A, high danger chances, 1 for, 3 against while he was out there. I mean, his play is without the puck, but unfortunately, usually the team doesn't have the puck when he's out there. So he does his best, and he certainly laid on the bod, and he put it all out there. There's no question about that. But he was, to break even is kind of the best you can hope for, as Craig McTavish famously said a number of years ago.
Well, he's making an impact though with the physical play. So I think that's a really important thing. Kane, Nugent Hopkins, and McDavid have all been good. I really like Kane's physical play, his nastiness. He got caught on a penalty there, but I do like what he brings in that regard. And Connor McDavid he's played some of the best hockey of his life in these playoffs. I just think he's been fantastic. So it's frustrating that he's bringing this, and the team is still not there. It's still not there, Bruce. At this point, maybe they'll get there in the next 2 games, or then they got 1 game to get there, I guess.
Wow, they got 1 game to get there. So.
Alrighty, Bruce. Well, you got to do the game grades, eh? So.
Yeah, and I'm at a loss even as to how to score some of this, but whatever, we'll just wing it. I mean, there was so much happening so fast. It was really hard to get a real full take on this player or that player. This was a game that was played on the edge almost throughout. There was very few times that you could sort of just say, well, they're taking control, and they're D to D, they're working it out. There just wasn't a lot of taking command at the game, except for at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And yeah, anyway.
Well, don't sweat it too much. Just, go, just throw the old dart at the board. And
yeah, no, the number is not, the number is just it's just an opinion, a 1-digit opinion. It's the comments that I try and pay the most attention to, and the comments will be a little scattered because there's just too much happening too fast to sort of detail what each player did over the course of the game. So, whatever. The main numbers that matter from this game is 5-4. And that's the final score of this one, and the bad guys won it. And Oilers haven't won an overtime game since David Desharnais against San Jose Sharks, which also happened to be the last time they won a series.
They needed this game.
Pretty desperately. Yeah.
Yeah. All right, Bruce. Thanks for talking tonight.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
And in the meantime, and in between times, this has been another edition of the Cult of Hockey podcast.